Dr. Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Young Frankenstein wasn't just a comedy. It was a full-blown resurrection. This film dragged gothic horror and black and white parody back from the grave, but making it was anything but smooth. The studio hated the style, the title was nearly scrapped, and one wild scene almost earned an R rating. Join us as we uncover 20 shocking facts you never knew about Young Frankenstein and relive the magic of a true cinematic legend. Mel Brooks' fierce color war. Can you imagine a movie shot in the 1970s that absolutely had to be black and white? Our genius director, Mel Brooks, was adamant that Young Frankenstein had to be filmed in black and white to authentically recapture the atmosphere of Universal's classic monster movies from the 1930s. The studio freaked out. They thought no one in the 70s would pay to see a black and white comedy. They offered more money, bigger promotions, even a color sneak preview. But Brooks refused, even threatening to quit if forced to shoot in color. In the end, the studio relented, with one condition. They couldn't advertise that the film was in black and white. This wasn't just nostalgia, it was a steadfast rebellion for art, something true cinephiles surely appreciate. Gene Wilder's unbelievable condition to join the film. Have you ever wondered what made Gene Wilder, the unforgettable Frederick Frankenstein, set such a unique demand for Mel Brooks to be in this movie? Wilder said he would only play Frederick Frankenstein if Mel Brooks didn't appear in the film as an actor. His reason? Wilder felt Brooks had a habit of breaking the fourth wall, looking directly at the audience, and he wanted this film to be real, not silly at all. Brooks agreed to stay behind the camera, but as we'll see later, he still found ways to leave his mark everywhere. Quite an interesting compromise, wouldn't you say? Original lab equipment from 1931. Imagine stepping into a classic horror film from the 1930s, but it's a comedy. To create absolute authenticity for the lab scenes, Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder did something incredible. They tracked down Kenneth Strickfaden, who built the original Frankenstein lab equipment for the 1931 classic. And unbelievably, he still had it all. Tesla coils, electrical arcs, control panels, everything. They were dusty, stored in a garage, but still worked. The entire collection was moved to the Young Frankenstein set and fit in as if it had never left. This wasn't a replica. This was a true resurrection of a piece of cinematic history. The putting on the Ritz scene was nearly cut. You might be shocked to learn that one of the most memorable and hilarious scenes, the classic putting on the Ritz number, almost didn't make it to the screen. Mel Brooks believed the scene was too weird, too long, too jarring, too much like Broadway. He argued with Gene Wilder for days, begging him to cut it, but Wilder stood his ground. He believed in that moment. Finally, they reluctantly shot the scene, and then magic happened. The first time Brooks watched it back with full costumes and lighting, he completely changed his mind. He not only approved it, but admitted it might be the best scene in the movie. Sometimes, the craziest ideas are exactly what make a masterpiece. Don't you agree? The wild improvisation of Wilder and Feldman and the shifting hump. Do you remember the unbelievably hilarious moments between Gene Wilder and Marty Feldman? Even though Mel Brooks always wanted a serious set, Wilder and Feldman didn't play by the rules. Between takes, the two would whisper, adjust lines, change comedic situations, and tweak timings. Brooks would yell, stick to the script, but they'd just smile and keep changing things. Marty Feldman even spontaneously changed his voice in one scene without telling anyone. The entire crew burst out laughing. Brooks was furious until he watched the footage back. He realized it wasn't just funny, but vibrant, creative, and surreal. And there's another fascinating tidbit about Feldman. In one scene, Igor's hump is on the right, then it's on the left, then it disappears, then reappears. That wasn't a mistake. It was Marty Feldman's joke. He intentionally moved the hump around to mess with everyone. When Mel Brooks found out, he burst out laughing and told the editor, "Leave it in." The hump became a hidden gem, Never mentioned, never explained. Just one more reason why the film is so strange and clever. It's that lovable quirkiness we often see in classic old films.
You know, I don't mean to embarrass you, but I'm a rather brilliant surgeon. Perhaps I could help you with that hump.
What hump?
Peter Boyle's Unsung, suffering as the monster. While Peter Boyle looked terrifying as the monster, under the studio lights, he was truly miserable. The makeup took hours to apply, layers of latex cartilage, adhesives, each layer trapping heat against his skin. Under the studio lights, it didn't take long for everything to start melting. His face would sag, his forehead would bubble, and the fake scars would slide out of place. The crew had to stop filming, rush him to a fan, and reapply everything from scratch. And through it all, Boyle barely complained. He sweated, he stumbled, he danced in a tuxedo, and he transformed physical discomfort into something unforgettable. You see, to get a role of a lifetime, sometimes artists have to sacrifice a lot.
We love him! Oh.
Frau Blücher drove the whole crew. Crazy. Have you ever wondered why Cloris Leachman's Frau Blücher had such a strange allure to the point of making the entire crew surrender? Cloris Leachman wasn't trying to be funny. When she stepped into the role of Frau Blücher, she brought a sharp, cold, and composed demeanor. It wasn't the over-the-top energy Mel Brooks usually loved, but something more subdued, stranger. She delivered every line as if it carried immense weight, even when the words themselves were absurd, and that's what made it dangerous. Every time she opened her mouth, the cast couldn't stop laughing. Gene Wilder would burst out laughing mid-dialogue. Terry Garr had to turn away. Even the camera crew couldn't hold back their laughter behind the lens. They tried take after take, but no one could keep a straight face. So, they made a choice rarely seen in comedy. They didn't ask her to tone it down. They cut around the laughter to preserve her vibrant performance exactly as she delivered it. Quite a bold decision, but it created a legendary character. Do you remember what made you laugh the most the first time you watched this movie? Was it a line, an expression, or a hilarious situation that's been etched into your memory from those days? Share your memories in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Casting Inga and the unexpected swap. Did you know that Terry Garr, the actress who played Inga with that charming German accent, almost wasn't in Young Frankenstein? Initially, the studio had chosen a more dramatic actress with a classic look. In fact, Madeline Kahn, who later played Elizabeth, was originally slated for Inga, while Terry Garr auditioned for Elizabeth. But after many disagreements about the script and direction, the role opened up. With cameras ready, it was Gene Wilder's quiet recommendation that brought Terry Garr to the role. She arrived without any fanfare, no pressure, no extensive preparation, but she understood the film's rhythm before anyone even explained it. Brooks smiled after her first reading. Clearly, Terry Garr wasn't just a placeholder. She was the role, and no one else could have replaced her. Sometimes fate's arrangements bring about the most wonderful things. Gene Hackman's surprise Hollywood star cameo. Can you believe that an Academy Award-winning actor, known for dramatic roles, appeared in a comedy film uncredited and unpaid? Gene Hackman, who was at the peak of his career, had no experience with parody comedy films. But one day, he happened to meet Gene Wilder on the tennis court. Hackman said, "I want to do something funny, just once." Wilder had the perfect idea, a blind hermit offering soup, wine, and cigars to the monster. Hackman shot that scene in one day. He even burned Peter Boyle's pants and broke props, yet acted with absolute sincerity. This became one of the most unexpected and unforgettable cameos in comedy history. Mel Brooks, unseen but heard. Even though Gene Wilder banned Mel Brooks from appearing on screen to maintain the film's realness, did you know that Brooks's voice still permeated every frame of Young Frankenstein? If you listen closely, his voice is still there. Like the wolf's howl, the cat's meow, and the distant train whistle. Brooks kept his face off screen, but his fingerprints, they were everywhere. A mischievous compromise, right? Showing his humor was present in every nook and cranny of the film. A real storm on the lab set. Have you ever wondered how storms were created in classic films before the digital age? For young Frankenstein, if they needed a thunderstorm, they had to create it themselves. The crew installed pipes and tanks to simulate rain, built wind machines, flash rigs, and custom light boards. And when they turned it all on at once, it worked a little too well. The rain pressure broke the system, lights shorted out, and the set was ankle-deep in water before they could shut it down. For a moment, they thought the lab scene would be delayed for days. But the crew worked through the night, drying everything out, and filmed the next morning as if nothing had happened. What you see on screen, controlled chaos, just enough to make a classic shot. Those difficulties truly made the undeniable quality of the film. The bizarre origin of the terrified horse Whinny at the name Frau Blücher.
I am Frau Blücher.
This is one of the strangest and funniest running gags in the film, but few know its true origin. Mel Brooks later revealed that the sound cue wasn't just for laughs. It was based on a real woman he remembered from his childhood, someone cold, harsh, and frightening. In the film, the horses react as if they are haunted by the name, because in Brooks's mind, that name carried a weight. It transformed into one of the most surreal gags in cinema history. But beneath it, a bit of darkness, a bit of truth, and an unforgettable memory of the director. Certainly, childhood memories always hold a special power, don't they? The fierce battle over the film's title. Can you believe that even the film's title was a tough battle, something that often happened in the old film industry? For Gene Wilder, the title Young Frankenstein was perfect. It conveyed everything: tone, legacy, satire. But the studio disagreed. They thought it sounded confusing, too literary, too strange, too slow. At one point, executives even suggested calling it Frankenstein Returns, or Son of Frankenstein, the comedy. Mel Brooks refused, and Wilder was furious. He told Brooks, "If they change the title, I'm out." It was a rare moment Wilder showed his intensity, calm on set, but unyielding when it mattered. In the end, the studio relented, and the name remained simple, strange, and unforgettable. Sometimes, to protect one's artistic vision, you have to stand firm like that. Among these behind-the-scenes details, which one surprised you the most or brought back the most memories of the golden age of cinema? Was it an unexpected mishap on set or a creative decision that changed the entire work? Let us know your thoughts. The phrase, "walk this way," and Aerosmith's legendary song. Just a throwaway line in a comedy, but it left an indelible mark on popular culture, even believed to have inspired a legendary rock song. Igor hands Dr. Frankenstein a cane and says, "Walk this way." Both then hobble off, hunching in the exact same manner. The gag landed, and the audience loved it. But then, something strange happened. Years later, fans began saying that Aerosmith's hit song, "Walk This Way," was inspired by that very scene. The band never officially confirmed it, but the release date? Suspiciously coincidental. Whether the story is true or not, that gag left its mark, an absurd moment that may have echoed from horror parody to rock history. Quite an unexpected connection, wouldn't you say? A scene nearly got an R rating because of one line. Did you know that Young Frankenstein almost received an R rating, restricted audience, for a single line of dialogue, not for violence or crude language? It was a line in the final act, when the monster is about to consummate the relationship with Elizabeth, and she gasps, "The sweet of life at last! I found you!" The ratings board flagged this line. They called it suggestive in an unnatural context. Brooks was stunned. He argued that the line was satirical, a musical callback, a joke. It took 3 rounds of back-and-forth negotiation before the film kept its PG rating, just 1 line, 1 joke, an inch from an R rating. What an incredible thing about those old regulations. The unexpected box office success of A Quiet Gamble. Young Frankenstein was initially not expected to make money, something many of us probably witnessed with different works back then. It was black and white, it was strange, and it was unlike anything else in theaters in 1974. The studio quietly released it with low expectations. No big marketing push, no holiday debut, no positioning for award season. Just another quirky Mel Brooks experiment. But then something strange happened. Audiences kept coming back. Word of mouth spread like wildfire, and the numbers? They didn't just grow, they exploded. By the end, Young Frankenstein grossed over $80 million on a budget of just under $3 million. It outperformed most blockbusters that year, including films with 3 times the budget and 10 times the promotion. The studio didn't believe in it, but the audience did, and they turned A Quiet Gamble into a cultural juggernaut, a testament to the power of a truly great work. The film was mistaken for a real Frankenstein sequel. From the very first frame, Young Frankenstein looked like it walked straight out of the 1930s, something only those who had seen the classic horror films could truly recognize. The shadows, camera angles, pacing, lab equipment, everything was perfect. So when it hit theaters, something strange happened. Older audiences, those who grew up with the original Frankenstein films, thought this was a genuine sequel. Some asked if it was a lost classic. Others said they remembered seeing parts of it as children. Mel Brooks never corrected them. He just smiled, because the goal wasn't just to parody those old films, but to live inside them. And somehow, he did it. It was an undeniable success in creating a truly authentic piece of nostalgia. Gene Wilder's laughing fits and the power of editing. Did you know that Gene Wilder, one of the most talented actors, often couldn't stop laughing on set, leading to scenes having to be shot over and over again? According to Cloris Leachman, Wilder was like Jimmy Fallon, constantly breaking into laughter mid-scene. Some scenes had to be reshot more than a dozen times to get it right. This shows that the humor on set was incredibly intense. Additionally, the first cut of Young Frankenstein was almost twice as long as the final version. It was, apparently, not very good. Wilder and Brooks thought they might have a flop on their hands, but then they got to work editing, and they edited non-stop. In the end, they trimmed the film into the final product with which both the director and star were satisfied. This proves the incredible power of editing, transforming a potential piece into a masterpiece. A lesser-known, but incredibly important stage. Honored in the U.S. Library of Congress, most comedies aren't usually considered art, but merely entertainment. But in 2003, the Library of Congress inducted Young Frankenstein into the National Film Registry, declaring it to be of cultural, historical, or aesthetic significance. It joined a small list of honored comedies, not because it was safe, but because it dared to be strange. This preservation isn't just about the original film, it's about memory. A film created to mimic the past became a part of America's future, a cultural legacy we still cherish today. The film's fake funeral. When Young Frankenstein wrapped, no one wanted to leave, a feeling anyone who's been part of a meaningful project can understand. The cast had spent months together, rehearsing, rewriting scripts, bursting into laughter between takes. What started as a parody had become something personal. A film about resurrection ultimately breathed life into everyone who touched it. So, on the last day of shooting, someone had an idea. If they had to say goodbye, why not make it official? They gathered on set. Someone brought candles, someone found a sheet for a shroud, and together they held a mock funeral for the film. They spoke in accents, delivered eulogies, and took turns mourning the characters they had created. It was absurd, emotional, and perfectly young Frankenstein. For a film built on laughter, it ended in something deeper. Not just a goodbye to a job, but a farewell to one of the strangest and happiest chapters of their lives. A truly special ending for a special film. Wouldn't you agree? Blazing Saddles, 1974. 20 Weird Facts You Didn't Know. Welcome back to Who Remembers. Today, we're going to saddle up, travel back in time to 1974, and explore a comedy movie that became a legend, a satirical masterpiece that dared to break all the rules and blow away Hollywood at the time. Blazing Saddles. This wasn't just a simple Western parody. It was a punch straight to the face of stupidity and societal prejudices. Can you believe this film was so bold that it almost never even made it to theaters? Whether you've seen Blazing Saddles so many times you know it by heart, or this is the first time you're hearing about it, let's discover 20 weird and unbelievable facts about the production process and behind-the-scenes stories you might not have known. The first day of filming was a complete disaster. Can you believe that the iconic role of the Waco Kid, forever linked to Gene Wilder's name, wasn't originally meant for him at all? This role was initially given to Oscar-winning actor Gig Young. With his suitable appearance and the studio's trust, Gig Young seemed like the perfect choice. But on the very first day of filming, a terrible incident occurred. While shooting Jim's, Gene Wilder's character later on, introduction scene in the jail, a scene where the character is hanging upside down, Gig Young collapsed right in the middle of the scene. At first, the crew thought he was just acting his heart out, but the truth was much more tragic. Gig Young was struggling with severe alcohol addiction, and he vomited all over the set. The situation was so serious that after just a few hours, Gig Young couldn't continue and was forced to withdraw from the film completely. That was certainly a rocky start, making everyone question if the movie could even continue. The studio was so horrified, they wanted to kill the movie. When the powerful executives at Warner Brothers Studio first saw the rough cut of Blazing Saddles, their reaction wasn't laughter or excitement, but absolute horror. According to Mel Brooks, during that screening, almost no one laughed. They absolutely couldn't believe what was happening before their eyes. The movie contained overly bold racial satire, public fart jokes, gun violence, and constant risky insults. The executives considered this an act of suicide in terms of career and finances. They thought this movie couldn't succeed and could even ruin the studio's reputation. The initial plan after that horrifying screening was to kill the movie, quietly bury it in the vaults. They didn't want to release it publicly for fear of a fierce public reaction. This decision shows the big difference between Mel Brooks's groundbreaking vision and the cautious, conservative nature of traditional studio executives. The future of Blazing Saddles at that moment was dimmer than ever, and only something extraordinary could save it. The film title was considered suggestive. Even the film title, Blazing Saddles, was a difficult battle. Before the script was even completed and went into production, Warner Brothers executives immediately had a problem with the name. They thought the name sounded too sexual and risky, conjuring associations with 1970s adult films, and was not suitable for a mainstream product. The executives constantly pressured Mel Brooks to change the film's title, offering choices they considered safer and more acceptable, such as Tex X or Black Bart. These were names that were more directly descriptive or related to the main character, sounding more serious and less controversial. However, Mel Brooks resolutely refused to compromise. He explained that the name Blazing Saddles was a crucial part of the joke. It was bold, suggested something hot or fiery, and importantly, It defined the tone and groundbreaking spirit for the entire film. Brooks revealed he came up with the unique name while taking a bath. Finally, thanks to Brooks's persistence, this daring and suggestive name was kept, becoming an essential part of the film's identity. Chaotic ending scene was fiercely opposed by the studio. The ending scene of Blazing Saddles is famous for its sudden and chaotic breaking of the fourth wall. The characters suddenly escape the Western setting, run through different sound stages in Hollywood, and finally join an unexpected musical performance with comedian Dom DeLuise. This was a completely unpredictable ending, and as you might guess, this crazy ending met with fierce opposition from the Warner Brothers executives. They completely didn't understand what was happening. They called the scene too crazy, a waste of time, and completely irrelevant to the main story. One executive even directly asked Mel Brooks, "Why are they leaving the movie?" Mel Brooks, with his nonchalance and decisiveness, simply replied, "Because it's over." The musical performance with Dom DeLuise at the end of the film was mostly improvised. The dancers in that scene also had almost no rehearsal time. The entire chaos and unexpectedness of this ending was pieced together in editing, creating a one-of-a-kind conclusion that, despite being heavily opposed by the studio, perfectly fit the film's groundbreaking and satirical spirit. The first film with audible flatulence. Did you know that the noisy campfire scene isn't just an unforgettable funny moment in Blazing Saddles, but it also made cinematic history? That's right. Blazing Saddles proudly holds the title as the first major film in Hollywood history bold enough to put audible flatulence on the big screen. Mel Brooks, with his meticulous attention and unique comedic vision, argued that in the context of the Wild West, where cowboys often ate meals full of beans, making noisy sounds after eating was completely realistic and authentic. He believed that including this detail in the film would not only increase authenticity in his own humorous way, but also create a surprising and groundbreaking comedic element. Brooks didn't even want the audience to miss this historical moment. He deliberately made the fart sounds in that scene louder than usual, ensuring that even when the audience was doubled over with laughter, they could still hear it clearly. This small but daring detail was shocking, controversial, but also contributed to defining the film's dangerous and rule-breaking nature. It showed Brooks's readiness to push boundaries and find laughter in unexpected places. The film faced intense censorship pressure. Blazing Saddles, with its sharp and daring satire, faced extremely strong resistance from censors at the time. They didn't hesitate to express their desire to cut entire pages from the script that contained what they considered too risky. This list of things to remove included most of the racial slurs, sex jokes, religious mockery, and even jokes related to Nazis. Censors considered this content too sensitive and unsuitable for widespread screening. One censor went even further by directly threatening Mel Brooks that he would never work again in the film industry if he dared to air that version. Brooks had to fight fiercely for every shocking line and every risky scene. Even the famous "Up Yours" line that appears early in the film caused days of debate between Brooks and the censors. Fortunately, Mel Brooks had the final cut privilege. This meant the ultimate decision on what the film looked like belonged to him. Thanks to this right, Brooks succeeded in keeping the film true to his original vision, preserving the boldness and satirical power he desired. Hidden Jewish joke on the poster. Mel Brooks's mischief wasn't limited to the film. He also hid a clever hidden Jewish joke right on the movie poster. If you look closely at the headband worn by the chief character, played by Brooks, on the poster, you'll see a line of text written in Hebrew. That line reads, Pesher L'Ksak. If you translate it into English, it becomes Posher L'Kisak, or Posher for Passover. Sounds meaningless, right? But this is a fun English wordplay called a spoonerism. When you transpose the sounds of the phrase Posher for Passover, it becomes Kosher for Passover. Kosher for Passover is a very familiar phrase in Jewish culture, relating to the strict dietary laws Jews must follow during the Passover holiday. By placing this phrase on the headband of a Native American chief on a Western film poster, Mel Brooks created a multi-layered joke, connecting with his Jewish heritage, satirizing random cultural mashups in the film, and challenging sharp-eyed audiences to spot it. It's a unique touch, only from Mel Brooks. Crew laughed so much it made filming difficult. When making an excellent comedy like Blazing Saddles, sometimes the humor itself becomes a challenge. Many scenes in the film had to be redone multiple times, not because actors forgot their lines, the camera broke, or the lighting wasn't right, but simply because the entire crew couldn't stop laughing. This happened especially often during the film's peak moments, such as the famous campfire scene with all the unexpected noises, Slim Pickens' monologues, and every time Mel Brooks himself appeared in his cameo roles. He played the governor and the Native American chief. Uncontrolled laughter caused technical problems. Camera operators shook the camera by laughing, ruining the shot. Boom operators laughed so much the microphone dipped into the frame. Even the assistant director, who was supposed to maintain order, had to leave the set because he was laughing too loudly. The situation became chaotic in a funny way. Mel Brooks finally had to yell at his crew, "Don't enjoy the movie anymore, we're still shooting it." This shows the fun, working atmosphere and the film's success right from the set. Richard Pryor helped write the script, but was blacklisted by the studio. Mel Brooks initially had a burning desire. He really wanted Richard Pryor, a comedy superstar with a very sharp and daring style at the time, to play the main role of Bart. Richard Pryor wasn't just a candidate for the role, he also contributed a very important part to the scriptwriting process. Pryor brought a real danger and a biting satire to the script that Brooks needed. Pryor's involvement helped Brooks get the permission and confidence to include risky and sensitive jokes about race, which were the core of the film. However, when Richard Pryor's name was brought up, Warner Brothers studio fiercely objected. They saw Pryor as someone with a troubled history, someone who was notorious for the wrong reasons, and was struggling with addiction. They were afraid and didn't want any association with him, fearing it would affect their image and revenue. Although Mel Brooks tried his best to persuade the studio, the role ultimately didn't go to Richard Pryor and went to the talented actor Cleavon Little. This is an interesting fact showing how pressure from the studio can greatly influence the production process and casting choices. The Hedy Lamarr name gag led to a lawsuit. In Blazing Saddles, the main villain, played by Harvey Korman, has a very distinctive name, Hedy Lamarr. This name was given by Mel Brooks based on the name of the real-life famous actress, Hedy Lamarr. Brooks used this name similarity as a source of humor in the film. However, the real actress Hedy Lamarr didn't find it funny at all. She felt her name was used without permission and sued Mel Brooks in court for using her name. This lawsuit became a famous behind-the-scenes story. Ultimately, the matter was settled out of court. Mel Brooks had to pay a sum of money in compensation to Hedy Lamarr to resolve this lawsuit. Interestingly, the lawsuit happened while the film was still in production. Brooks, with his endless sense of humor, decided to add a humorous line to the film to reference the lawsuit itself, turning a legal problem into a meta-joke right on screen. This shows Brooks's cleverness in turning real-life issues into material for his film, Mel Brooks's legendary emergency call. Facing the disaster of losing his lead actor on the very first day, genius director Mel Brooks proved his mettle. He didn't panic at all. Instead, he walked off the set, picked up the phone, and called just one person he completely trusted, Gene Wilder. Mel Brooks later described this call as a rescue mission. The strange and incredible thing was that Gene Wilder didn't ask to see the script or ask anything about the role. He simply replied concisely, "Yes." The only request Gene Wilder made was, "I'm not going to play this part for laughs. I'm going to play it completely seriously." Mel Brooks agreed immediately without hesitation. As it turned out, Gene Wilder's very calm, dry, and layered acting style became the secret weapon that elevated the entire film. Wilder flew to the set the very next morning, despite being tired and completely unprepared. His timely appearance saved the situation and created one of the most memorable performances in cinematic history. John Wayne read the script and found it hilarious. Mel Brooks had a bold idea. He wanted to invite John Wayne, a living legend of the Western genre and an icon of American masculinity, to appear in Blazing Saddles. Brooks sent the script to the Duke of the West, hoping he would say yes. The good news is that John Wayne actually read the script, and he found it very, very funny. A Western legend laughing his head off at a movie parodying his own genre. That's surprising. However, despite really liking the script, John Wayne politely declined the invitation to participate in the film. The reason he gave was that he feared appearing in a satirical comedy like Blazing Saddles might tarnish the image he'd carefully built in other serious and classic Western films. He wanted to protect his cinematic legacy. Even without participating, John Wayne said something very supportive to Mel Brooks. "I'll be the first one in line to see the movie," and he kept his word. John Wayne actually attended the premiere of Blazing Saddles to watch the film. The fondness of a Western icon like John Wayne for this film was a strong affirmation of its comedic value, despite its satirical nature. If you're getting lost in these unexpected and fascinating behind-the-scenes stories, don't forget to give us a like and hit subscribe, so you don't miss the next exciting memory explorations. Your memories are most important to us. Cleavon Little-Faced Real Hate. By taking on the lead role of Bart, becoming one of the first black actors to play a central role in a major Hollywood comedy in 1974, Cleavon Little had to face no small challenges. He paid a personal price for this breakthrough. Throughout filming, Cleavon Little constantly received hate mail, insults, and even threats. This shows that a segment of the audience at that time didn't distinguish between satire in a movie and real life, reacting negatively to a black actor taking on the role of a Western hero. Mel Brooks recounts that Cleavon Little handled all this pressure and pain with incredible grace and never let it show on set. His professionalism and resilience were truly admirable. Another touching story involves Burton Gilliam, who played Lyle. Gilliam initially found it incredibly difficult and uncomfortable having to use racial slurs towards Cleavon Little in the film, because he genuinely liked Little outside of work. Cleavon Little keenly noticed Gilliam's hesitation and pulled him aside to reassure him. Little reminded Gilliam that those were just lines in the script, not his words. He even joked lightly, "If I thought you'd ever say those words to me in any other situation than in the movie, we'd be going to Fisticuff City. But this is just fun. Don't worry about it." Little's words not only helped Gilliam feel more comfortable acting, but also showed his deep understanding and how he faced racial discrimination, turning it into a moment of connection between the actors. Theme song sung by someone who didn't know it was a comedy. The theme song of Blazing Saddles has a very sincere and dramatic Western ballad feel, completely different from the film's comedic tone. The person chosen to perform this song was Frankie Lane, one of the most famous and respected Western singers of the era. Mel Brooks particularly wanted Frankie Lane's voice to be truly sincere and full of emotion, to create a humorous contrast with the film's content. Brooks worried that if Frankie Lane knew this was a comedy film, he wouldn't sing the song with the conviction and seriousness he wanted. For that reason, Mel Brooks decided to trick Frankie Lane. Brooks told Lane that this song was for a dramatic Western film, a serious work about the West. Frankie Lane completely believed it and performed the song with all his sincerity and emotion. Frankie Lane only discovered the truth that he had sung the theme song for a comedy after he went to the theater and saw Blazing Saddles himself. Fortunately, he really liked the movie. This story shows Mel Brooks's cleverness and a bit of mischievousness in achieving the artistic effect he desired. Punching out a horse was, partially, real. One of the most shocking and unforgettable moments in Blazing Saddles is when the giant character Mongo, played by Alex Karras, seems to knock out a horse with just one punch. This scene looks very real, and many people wonder if special effects were used. The truth is, the scene was filmed for real, not entirely relying on special effects. What's even more surprising is that this scene was inspired by a real-life story. Mel Brooks had a former boss named Sid Caesar, and there's a famous anecdote that Caesar once punched out a horse after the animal threw his wife off. The crew recreated this story under controlled conditions on set. They used a horse specifically trained for the scene and a skilled stunt performer to execute the fall. Although the incident was carefully staged to be as safe as possible, it still involved a real punch and a real horse falling down on cue. The scene was so shocking that the studio expressed concern, and both Brooks and the studio received letters of protest from animal rights activists. Despite nearly causing an accident, the scene with the unexpected punch was still kept by Brooks in the final cut, contributing to the unpredictable nature and extraordinary strength of the character Mongo. Which moment or character in the film impressed you the most, and why? Native Americans speaking Yiddish. One of the most humorous and subtly satirical moments in Blazing Saddles appears in a flashback scene where Bart recounts his family's journey west and meeting a group of Native Americans. In this scene, the chief of the Native American tribe, a cameo role played by director Mel Brooks himself, communicates with members of his tribe in Yiddish. The use of Yiddish in this scene is a biting satirical joke by Mel Brooks. He wanted to mock how traditional Hollywood often inaccurately portrayed Native Americans on screen, using languages, costumes, or customs that were completely unrelated to real-life tribes. By replacing indigenous language with Yiddish, Brooks created an absurd juxtaposition, highlighting the arbitrary and poorly researched way Hollywood often depicted different cultures. This is an example of Brooks using comedy to comment on the film industry itself and common prejudices. Ignored by the Academy. Despite being a huge box office success, a major cultural phenomenon, and making a strong impact in the 1970s, Blazing Saddles did not receive the recognition it deserved from the film establishment. At the Academy Awards, the film received only 3 nominations: Best Supporting Actress for Madeline Kahn, who played Lily Von Stupp, Best Film Editing, and Best Original Song for the theme song. However, surprisingly, the film did not win any Oscars for those nominations. Many people believe this is because the Hollywood establishment at the time felt that Blazing Saddles was too edgy, too coarse, and too dangerous to publicly celebrate. The film's uncompromising satire and groundbreaking nature perhaps made it hard to swallow for some conservative members of the Academy. Mel Brooks later joked about this in a humorous and philosophical way. He said, "They didn't give us the statues, but they gave us something better: repeat business." The phrase "repeat business" refers to the audience's sustained love and support over many generations. For Brooks, the audience's love and repeat viewings were more valuable than any award. The audience saved. Blazing Saddles. Facing the risk of his passion project being buried in the vaults, Mel Brooks didn't give up. He pleaded and fought for another chance. Brooks asked the studio to organize another test screening, this time specifically for the studio's lower-level staff, people who were perhaps more open and closer to public taste. The result of this second test screening became a historical moment. According to Brooks, the first 20 minutes were still filled with anxious silence. But then, when the movie reached the famous campfire scene, where the cowboys are sitting around eating beans and making some natural noises, the entire theater burst into laughter. What was special was that the laughter wasn't just a few small chuckles. It echoed throughout the theater, non-stop. The laughter of the studio employees was so loud it drowned out the sound in the movie. This laughter-filled test screening succeeded in convincing the rigid Warner Brothers executives that Blazing Saddles had a special appeal. The audience's laughter was the most powerful evidence, forcing them to take a risk and release the film publicly. Thanks to the positive reaction from regular audiences, the movie the studio wanted to discard had a chance to shine and become a legend. Blazing Saddles is filled with unique comedic moments. Which moment or character in the film impressed you the most, and why? Toll booth brawl scene. Nearly caused a fatal accident. In a large-scale action scene at the end of the film, involving the destruction of a toll booth, the film crew nearly suffered an extremely serious accident. The script called for an explosive charge to be set up to blow up the fake toll booth. However, during filming, the explosive charge detonated earlier than planned. The terrifying part was that debris and the force from the explosion flew out just seconds after the actors had managed to escape the danger zone. The distance between safety and tragedy was incredibly narrow. After the explosion happened, everyone on set was stunned into silence by the horror. This incident was a severe warning about the risks of filming action scenes. To ensure absolute safety, after this incident, Mel Brooks issued an order prohibiting all unnecessary personnel from being near the set during scenes using explosives. Although it nearly caused a fatal accident, the scene with the unexpected explosion was still kept by Brooks in the final cut, showing the acceptance of risk, measured in milliseconds, to get the most authentic and impressive shot. The filming horse had a nicer trailer than the actors. This is a weird and funny behind-the-scenes fact, showing how sometimes in Hollywood, four-legged co-stars are treated better than humans. During the filming of Blazing Saddles, one of the main stunt horses, the animal that performed its role very well in the scenes, was treated like an A-lister. This horse had its own private trailer, fully equipped like a mobile resting room. Inside the trailer, there was a plush mattress, cooling fans to ensure the horse was always comfortable, and even a personal attendant on duty constantly. Meanwhile, on the same set, some actors faced much more modest conditions. Some actors had to change clothes behind just a makeshift curtain or squeeze into cramped shared dressing rooms. Even Gene Wilder, the star of the movie, joked that the horse had better accommodations than he did. Mel Brooks later also confirmed that the horse truly was a star, and it knew it. He praised the horse for doing a great job in the role and never breaking character like the actors, who often laughed on set. This fact is a funny anecdote that adds to the enjoyment of this classic film's behind-the-scenes stories. And those are 20 weird facts about Blazing Saddles, a film that truly challenged every boundary, dared to satirize racial discrimination head-on, and proved that laughter can come from unexpected, even shocking places. Blazing Saddles wasn't just entertainment, it was a powerful social statement. And as Mel Brooks himself said, a film like this, with its boldness and uncompromising nature, couldn't be made today. It's a unique product of its time. After discovering these fascinating facts, do you find Young Frankenstein even more special? We've traveled back in time together, returning to a golden age of cinema where ceaseless creativity forged immortal works. Let us know which moment of the film still lingers in your mind, and why it's so meaningful to you in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you loved this trip down memory lane, don't forget to hit like to support us, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our next nostalgic videos, and share this video with friends who also love classic cinema and beautiful old memories.